Right, I've got to be careful how I um, proceed with this video. I went up to Let Women Speak yesterday, Hyde Park, and I just want to say that I'll start by saying that I want to be careful that I protect not only myself but the people that I'm referring to in this video, because obviously now I had a very unpleasant experience yesterday with Let Women Speak, Kelly J. Keane, and obviously I've got to be careful that I speak. I'm just telling it how it is. I'm speaking with from the heart, um, as I do. This is me. This is the way I am. Um, um, but the thing is, it's very difficult because I don't know what's going on in the. For all I know, Kelly J. Keane may not have wanted me to speak for some unknown reason. Maybe to protect me, I don't know. But I had a very unpleasant experience. I went all the way up to London yesterday to speak about these bruises, what the police, yeah, these bruises here. Um, exactly seven days earlier, I had been assaulted by several police officers, the Gestapo, banging on my door for a voluntary interview. Now, um, my partner agreed with me that he was actually going to come up to London with me. We've regrouped, but he's come down with a cold, and he agreed with me that this is something that they need to see. This is not a voluntary interview. I was beaten, assaulted, sexually assaulted, two police cars, plus an plus a police van, plus extra backup. This is the tyranny we're living under. I'm homeless. I'm also homeless. I've got a landlady in contempt of court, and I'm doing pretty bloody well. I'm extremely vulnerable. I went up to speak at Let Women Speak in March, and it's on YouTube. 40 minutes in, I'm the person with the black bow in their hair, and soon as I got to London, bearing in mind I had bought a train ticket just to come up from Eastbourne. And you know, it's not cheap going on the train, especially when you are suffering from trauma, corruption, homelessness, anxiety. So I bought a train ticket plus travel card just just to go up to Hyde Park, just specifically to have my say about what the Gestapo have been doing to me and my freedom of speech, Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, the tyranny that's going on right now. And I was worried that I was going to get there late because, of course, I get everywhere late. I am the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. I am constantly getting, I am so, um, I get everywhere late. I'm very all over the place. I can never get anywhere on time. Um, so when I got there to the Reformers Tree at Hyde Park, I had to get some water because I was late that I didn't manage to get a cup of tea. So when I was on the train, I had nothing to drink and my mouth was dry. So when I got to Victoria, I had to quickly get there to where is it, Edgware Road, and then walk and get some water. So I was you know dehydrated by the time. And when I got there, I put my hand up to speak, and Kelly J. Keane looked at me, and she said, "No, no, no." Well, I can't remember. It will be on YouTube. It was yesterday, Sunday. Yes, Sunday the 25th of May. Today is the 26th of May, bank holiday Sunday. And she looked at me and she said, "No," because I spoke for too long. And I said, "But I really need to speak. The bruises, the police have, see, they don't know. They don't know what happened." But I noticed how the woman who was filming, bless myself, sorry, excuse me, I didn't see that one. The woman who was filming, as soon as she saw me put my hand up, she whispered to Kelly J. Keane something, and Kelly looked at me. And bearing in mind I'm a broken person, I've lost a lot of confidence. I've been attacked in council accommodation to the point where I thought I'd be killed, which is something that I spoke about back in March. Contrary to the belief that some of those women think that I am, I don't know. One of them said, "Well, we need strong women. We don't want to look like weaklings." Actually, on the contrary, I've survived what most people wouldn't survive 2 minutes with. And obviously, it's thanks to Darren, my partner, encouraging my faith. Because there has been, quote unquote, emotional abuse from my partner, and he has said it's because of stress. Now, if you walk in the path of Yeshua, whom I follow, then your life is going to have, because I'm not following the world, I am being tested. So I'm going through the trials and tribulations, and I've had 9 years of torture. Like I said, when you've gone to the council to show photographs of bed bugs crawling on you, and I've still got them on my laptop, and I'm a technophobe, by the way. I'm a techie-phobe. I'm an amateur YouTuber. This is all amateur, very, very amateurish. What you see is what you get. I'm just trying to survive. So when you've gone to the council and you've shown printed photographs of bed bugs crawling on you, what would you expect the council to do for you? I've asked the police, the Gestapo, the custody suite, demented psychopaths, because they are psychopaths. I've actually been tortured, and as Richard Inman said, this is life in prison for public servants to torture us. I'm believe me, that they are torturing me to the nth degree. So as I said, when you've had your interim duty illegally discharged just for showing bed bugs crawling on you, photographs, and someone else's blood on the bed in one of these hellholes where I wouldn't put a dirty rat. I would treat a dirty rat better than this. I was thrown to the ground by a firearms officer with a taser and a gun and handcuffed for showing evidence of bed bugs crawling on me. Now, Caroline Ansell, the local MP, her caseworker, 9, 10 years ago gave Darren a caring role for me. This is Illuminati by the sea. Okay, there's a Freemason lodge in this town. Now, when you've got a desk sergeant who's gone through 3 degrees of Freemasonry to say that if you leave a card and flowers for your sister, you'll go to prison. And believe me, that's exactly what he said to me. It was Darren who suggested, my partner suggested I leave a card and flowers for my sister. Darren, my partner, also, for months and months and months on end, he said to me, have you contacted Kelly J yet? Have you contacted Kelly J? Now, I, up until yesterday, had never, ever, ever in my life spoken to or had any contact with Kelly J. Keane. One of the women at Let Women Speak behaved very, very bizarrely towards me. I gave her my email address, bearing in mind the only time I've ever been to Let Women Speak was back in March. I had it written down what I wanted to say. And because they've said I spoke for too long, which it was, I'd say it was just over 10 minutes. And it's on YouTube, you can go and have a look. It's back in March. And I was a bit blubbery, but bearing in mind, I have been through a lot. I've had 9 years of police beatings, illegal forced homelessness, and the establishment on my back. No friends, no support network. 2 threats of prison, one being for going up Beachy Head Suicidal, our world famous suicide spot. The legal ombudsman tried to get me compensation from Cramp and Mullany. The duty solicitor who was on my side with what happened to me a week ago when they burst in on me, and you can see it, the first 20 minutes are on YouTube of what the Gestapo did to me. The duty solicitor was a normal person. Hopefully he wasn't corrupt because he was on my side. He said, yeah, that's fine. Because the Freemasons like to invert. They invert your love. They invert anything. It's very satanic what the Freemasons do. It's the opposite of what you say. So I made a YouTube video with the title, My Love Offends My Sister. My transgender sister who's living as a man, and they were trying to they wanted to know if I have any mental health issues, which I'm not going to talk to them about anymore because obviously I'm long in the tooth when it comes to realizing that they weaponize everything that you say. If you say you're suicidal, they'll torture you even more. They'll keep you locked in the cell a few more hours, making you more ill, because that's what they do. It's all about creating illness. I don't drink, smoke, take drugs, or even take prescription pills. I do, however, take something for the cortisol, for the stress that they're causing me, because I've put on a bit of weight, because obviously I'm not the young lady that I used to be, you know. And cortisol is the stress hormone. Other than that, I don't take medication, but I do take something controlled for my insomnia. But because I've now been deregistered from my GP practice, I can't now take that controlled pill for my sleep, because what these people at Let Women Speak, they don't know anything about what happened to me. I spoke to Kelly J. Keane for no more than 5 minutes yesterday. I'd say no more than 5 minutes. And it took a lot of courage for me just to approach her. And the woman whose name I won't mention, because as I said, I want to protect I still want to protect these people. They talk about inclusivity, the word inclusivity. Well, there was no inclusivity for me. Let women speak. They didn't want me to speak. Kelly didn't want me to speak. For what? Right, I'm jumping all over the place here. Right, I'm jumping all over the place. I need to just stick to the point. So, I was about to say something. I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh yeah, so just to say, I approached Kelly J. Keane, just for the record, just as gently as I did with my transgender sister last year in August. 1 week, just exactly 7 days after the district judge told the landlady he could send her to prison for illegally locking me out of the house. 7 days later, it was 1 day before my middle sister's 50th birthday, and she's transgender. She's on crutches. Now, I've since learned something about hormone things from two men who were friendly, unlike the women at Let Women Speak. Now, I'm not saying that they were all unfriendly. I'll come to that in a minute. It was just a horrible, horrible experience yesterday. I'll come to that in a minute. I'm saying the way that I approached Kelly J. Keane was the way I went up to my middle sister, who's transgender and living as a man. I am walking on eggshells. So I'm walking on eggshells with everyone, right? Because nothing you want, it seems to be that nothing you can do will ever be right. Now, I don't want to do this thing where, I label Kelly J. Keane and her followers as narcissists. But there was a cult. I wouldn't do that. I'm being very, very careful. But there was, with what I experienced yesterday, a cult-like behaviour, bullying. Because let's face it, there's so much division in this world. It's like what Darren said about the Free Palestine thing and the thing that's going on in Israel. It's like the uniparty. Two shapes of the same lamb's tail. What do you call it? What's the phrase? You know, the Labour Party, the Conservative, it's basically the same thing. You know? It's not like Reform Party though. Reform and UKIP. Reform are definitely controlled opposition. And I already knew that because I'm switched on. In the same way that I knew that 20 years ago that one day there would be riots. And me and my late mother, over 20 years ago, we said that there were too many people in this country. Right? I predicted, so I already had that foresight. So I knew that Reform were controlled opposition. I didn't, however, know that Nigel Farage was a psychopath, i.e., a fox hunter. Everything that my late mother fought against. That's why I'm on the side of Nick Tenconi, because he said you won't get Christianity with Reform and you won't get mass deportations of illegal immigrants who shouldn't be here because they're here illegally, regardless of whether they have a criminal background or not. You know? So anyway, I'm not getting on to political stuff because I'm still learning about politics anyway. I am just speaking my truth. I went to Let Women Speak as an extremely vulnerable woman. I find it hard to speak to women anyway. This is why I get in I've got myself into difficult, vulnerable positions in the past with men. But I find it easier to talk to men, and there were two very friendly men yesterday. well, you know, they were friendly and they were helpful, whereas the women were cliquey. And I'll come, as I said, I'll come to that in a minute, because one of them has been stalked by a stalker who stalked Graham Linehan, who wrote Father Ted. And that poor man, he's been cancelled. Graham Norton is in the club. He didn't want to help him, and you can see the trauma in Graham Linehan when he's talking in interviews. Um, and I liked him in that episode of Alan Partridge. That was funny. I like him. Yeah. But anyway, so getting back to the point, and I just say, because obviously I'm going slightly off on a tangent here, but I honestly was only going to speak for about 2 minutes. They didn't know that. They just saw me and thought, oh my gosh, she might, you know. Uh, I didn't realise that speaking for 10 minutes or even just over 10 minutes was way too long for Let Women Speak. She wants you to speak for a couple of minutes and that's it. I did, however, think it was a bit strange that someone asked me to get to the point, because I timed someone else who spoke when I went to Let Women Speak in March. I timed how long someone else spoke, and it was near enough around the same amount of time that I spoke. Um, about the same. Anyway, but as Darren's, as my partner said, everyone everyone's got their different views about different things. It could be, who knows? I don't know what's going on in the minds of those people, but it was that one individual, that particular individual, who was so unpleasant, so hostile. She had already been paranoid about me when I spoke in March, and she took my email address, and I spoke to her on the tube before I said goodbye. So it's that one individual that I am appalled with, because she may have influenced Kelly J. Keane. I don't know. The way she reacted when I approached Kelly J. Keane so nervously, like I was walking on eggshells. The way she went on at me was as if I had been harassing her, when I'd never spoken to the woman before. I've never spoken to Kelly before. The only time I'd had any interaction with her was when I said about 2 words when she put the microphone on me back in March. So, to keep to the point, because I do get it, they have to, she's the boss. What she says goes. I was really as nervous with Kelly as I was with my transgender sister. I was like crying when I saw my sister. I love her. I put my arms around her. My sister didn't push me off her or tell me to go away. It was her support worker who swore at me because I wouldn't call her a man. And I was just as careful with my sister as I was with Kelly J. Keane. And even with this woman who has turned very hostile towards me, and as I said, I won't say her name. But as I said, she took my email address last time. So what happened was, let's get to the point, because this video is going to be longer than what it should be. Already now it's been 24 minutes. So what happened was, as I said, I got to Let Women Speak yesterday. Kelly was speaking and she said, who wants to speak? I put my hand up, I got there, made sure I didn't look desperate. And as soon as she looked, obviously, as I said, the woman who was filming the live stream I noticed how she looked at me and whispered to Kelly, and Kelly looked over at me and she said, no, not you, because, and she pointed and said, not you, because you spoke for too long. And that's when I said, but I really need to speak. I really need to. What the police did to me last week. And she said, no. So I immediately, obviously, that is going to affect me because I've come all the way up to London just for that. When Darren said to me he couldn't come up because he still had a cold, he's all bunged up, I very nearly went back to sleep actually, because I'm still getting over the trauma of what the police did to me. Um, I'm suffering with insomnia, anxiety. I'm an amazing woman. I'm a survivor. Even I forget just how strong I am. Because I said I whispered to another woman, I said, why doesn't she want me to speak? And she was like, oh, I think it's because I remember you got very emotional, and we need to be strong. We need to look strong, and we don't want the establishment to see us as weaklings. I tell you, the police have never ever, the Gestapo have never ever seen me cry. So to any people out there, and you know what? I want people out there from all over the world to see this. Unfortunately, I have had some very sad trolls, but even I forget just how strong I am. Because honestly, they sh she triggered it triggered suicidal feelings, and I'm still trying to recover from that. I've been praying, bearing in mind I cried all the way going up there and coming back in February when I got there too late. Then I got there on time in March and I felt physically sick. Because going up to London now is very, very hard for me. I have had so much police brutality and illegal forced homelessness, and then, of course, being attacked by those nutcases, those convicted criminals and drug addicts and whatnot. And I've had to go through so much on my own. So, anyway, so I was like, I was thinking to myself, stay calm, stay calm. Don't take it personally. We've got to be emotionally mature about this, Don't take it personally. I have to tell myself, don't react, and I don't because I'm doing what he wants me to do, YHWH. So, so this is because this is strengthening me as a woman, not in a self-empowerment, not in the way that I used to, which is going to the self, that satanic thing of you know self-empowerment. I used to do that when I was a young woman in my 20s, in my late teens and 20s and 30s. And of course now I'm a proper woman of YHWH. It's him who is strengthening me. Because I noticed how Kelly J. Keane had women get up and they were swearing about people, and they didn't feel bad about swearing. They didn't go, oh, pardon my language. They were like bullshit. And I don't mean bullshit in a, you know, I don't mean that in a condescending way. They're speaking out against the operatives that they're doing the right thing. They're speaking out against all this nonsense and the operatives that they're dealing with, but they don't want me to speak up. where's the inclusivity? Because these women should be there for everyone. There should be no discrimination. Let women speak, but not Bryony. You're too emotional. Actually, I handled it very well, and I handled it very well. The bullying that I received, the hostility that I received afterwards. So, um, yeah. So I whispered to another woman. I said, I've had to deal with absolute psychopaths. I've been tortured 7 days ago. I said, look at my bruises. Look what they did to me. This is not a voluntary interview. This is because I won't call my sister a man. They've made up false allegations, all this, you know, 2 police cars, plus a van, plus extra backup, blah, 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 blah. And, that I was trying to look for someone who would listen, but I was also like, thinking, who will listen, and the woman in question, whose name I shall not mention, whom I'm mainly speaking about, who turned hostile towards me, the woman who took my email address, she came over to me with a cigarette, and she was like, she said, Kelly, look, it's Kelly's decision. She's the boss. What she says goes. And this is what I mean by cult-like behavior. I said, yeah, no, I understand. I understand it. You've got to keep it to short. Last time you were here, you spoke for too long, and so I thought, yeah, okay, I get it. I said, I know. You can't just read off pieces of paper, just but reading off a piece of paper actually made it easier because it makes it shorter. Otherwise, I could have just gone on forever. And I didn't realize that 10 to 15 minutes was or even be even 20 minutes. I didn't realize. I can't remember how long exactly I spoke for, but it was 10 to 15 minutes. It was under 20 minutes. Um, but they cut me short anyway, and I expected that. But I made sure it was, as concise. When you've been through a lot and you're extremely vulnerable and you're just having your say, because it's been a shock to the system, and it still is, all this corruption. I've got a landlady in contempt of court. The police have handcuffed me and beaten, abused me, sexually assaulted me, exposed my breasts. 3 times I've had them now on my case. Yet the landlady's been told she could be sent to prison, and she's been in contempt of court since last year. And the local MP, no one is doing by law for me what they should be doing. Don't forget, I was reported. They don't realise that I was reported missing. Sussex police turned up. The local authorities are not doing what the district judge and the law is telling them to do for me. It's been nearly a year that this landlady made me homeless, and nearly a whole year. And less than 24 hours after the police are knocking on my door and doing a welfare check, they're banging on the door, forcing me into a voluntary interview, beating me. So it's not really making any sense, is it? So um so I followed them all to the pub. Pardon me. Ah, I do need to say this. Before I went to the pub with them, um before I went we yeah, so I was speaking to this woman, the woman in question who turned hostile towards me. She said she said it's been very stressful. It's been very stressful. We've had a lot. We went to Scotland. I said, if it's to do with the police, she said, we were down at Scotland Yard yesterday. I said, well, if I'd known that you were at Scotland Yard, I would have been there, because this is to do with what the police have done to me, torturing me. As Richard Inman said, it's life imprisonment for their torture of me. And Darren's friend Charlie said, we love you, I'm praying for you. He said, this is a form of manslaughter because they're pushing me to suicide. I lost blood last year. 3 months. I'm going to switch the light off actually. 3 months. That's better. 3 weeks, sorry, after the landlady locked me out. I was told I need a blood transfusion. Because on the Friday, my elderly friend I suggested we go to my GP practice. We asked them if they would contact you and Morrison, my caseworker from the local MP. Then we were both threatened with police. Then my elderly friend reported me missing. Then I've got the missing persons people from the police knocking on my door. Then less than 24 hours later, they're banging on the door saying, we want you to come for a voluntary interview. They did this a few weeks ago after the High Court ruling in Parliament to say a woman is a woman. And I refused that voluntary interview, so they beat me and forced me. Go back a couple of videos and you will see the first 20 minutes of what they did to me. The bruising here was really bad. I had a cut there. They carried me out. I was indecent. I'd just had a wash. My underwear was on the bed. I had women's problems. There was a man in here. I was sexually assaulted. They've exposed my breasts. They've rubbed them. They've rubbed my privates. I don't care. I don't care if they have to do that. I don't care. I don't care. This is torture, as Richard Inman said. It's life imprisonment. The government don't want you to know that because that will open up the floodgates. Nuremberg Treaty. I was just following orders. Did it get them off being hanged? No, it didn't. These are war crimes. This is civil war. This is my freedom of speech, Article 10 of the Human Rights Act. I'm a victim of rape. I put someone in prison, 2 years in prison, 10 years on a sex offenders register. I was taken to the Saturn Rape Victim Centre. They will not leave me alone. Now, this woman, she's got grey hair. I'm not going to say her name. I'm going to try not to. She was, when I went up in March to speak out at Let Women Speak, she was okay then. And she was okay at this point as well yesterday when Kelly refused to let me speak. But there was I noticed there was a policeman came over. Yeah, that was quite weird. A policeman came over and I can't remember what she said to the policeman. She said something to the policeman and she said maybe you should speak to the policeman about what happened to you or something. I said, I really need to speak. I said to her, I can't understand why Kelly doesn't want me to speak. It's her decision. She's the boss. I said, right. But I was already feeling, like very, very, very. You do take it personally. I get that they have to do, keep everything to a. But I come up specifically for this. So I just bit my tongue, I bit my tongue and like I said, so back in March, this same woman who turned hostile towards me, when I went up in March, um they'd all gone to the pub And this woman that I'm complaining about right now from Let Women Speak, who works closely with Kelly J. Keane, um, she got paranoid about some people who were sitting under the tree who had nothing to do with me, because obviously I'd gone up to London on my own, completely on my own. And they were the ones who told me which pub they all meet at, that they all go to. Now, I understand that they have to be sort of like vigilant, because apparently, according to this woman who's turned nasty towards me, Kelly has had liquid thrown over her at Hyde Park by the LGBT people, and it could have been acid. It's, there are nutters out there. We're living in a very dangerous time. And of course, with what happened to her in New Zealand, even someone as strong as Kelly J. Keane, I've seen her crying about it on YouTube, because she's only human at the end of the day. We're all human at the end of the day. We're all not superhuman. So I'm trying not to take it personally, obviously. Um, but this woman, I felt very embarrassed when I went up in March, because there were three people who were friendly with me, and I took the number of one of the people. I don't have her number anymore, but she said she was a Christian and she was against all of this. And, so she was like agreeing with me, and the others. And they told me which pub they went to. And when I got to the pub back in March, after I'd spoken at Let Women Speak, the woman who has turned funny towards me was there with two other women, including the one who does the filming. And those two women were very cliquey and very I don't not bullshit. I don't mean to say bullshit, that's not the right word. They were cliquey, and very overconfident, which is not a bad thing as such, being overconfident, because you need to be like that for these things. But I felt physically sick inside because of my anxiety, the trauma, being extremely vulnerable, everything that's happened. And the woman who's turned funny towards me, I was trying to speak to her. I'd also spoken to a woman from Birmingham who's got a brother who's living as a woman, so she's too has got a trans sibling, and she herself has had an aneurysm like my transgender sister, which has caused a blindness in her. She's got like a disability. She was the more friendly of them all, but I found it very difficult to communicate with these women. It's not how it should be, let's say. But the woman who has turned nasty towards me, which is what this whole video is about, she was listening to me in the end, and she took my email address. She said, we have to be careful about people, because we've had people who identify, we've had infiltrators, so we need to vet you to make sure that you're not a man pretending to be a woman. I was like, well, that's weird. I've never had someone say to me that they need to check that I'm not a man pretending to be a woman, infiltrating Let Women Speak. But I said, okay, yes, I understand. We live in a weird world. This is all new to me. So they've taken my details, and she took my details, because I said I want to find women in my area, because they're all very lefty loony here in Eastbourne and Brighton. And I went to Matthew 25, and they go along with all of this adult social. This is why I can't get the help I need. This is why I've had 9 years of forced homelessness by these evil psychopaths, because my disability under the Equality Act has been discriminated against. I was told by a locum, if I Dr. Innes Cameron from the Channel Islands has got a good reputation. He told me 9 years before they started torturing me that me and my transgender sister need trauma-based therapy. And I've had nothing but trauma. Do you see what I mean? I'm an amazing woman, okay? If I'm going to blubber a little bit, speaking out at Let Women Speak, then that, I mean, that's not my problem. If you've got a problem with me blubbering, getting a bit emotional, that's not my problem. That's your problem. But you're supposed to be inclusive of all women who oppose this nonsense. And I have been had yet another serious crime against humanity. This was not a voluntary interview. Look at these bruises. This was not a voluntary interview. This was a voluntary interview I turned down after the High Court ruling in Parliament. So I just don't understand, and I'm going to come to this, and it's taken nearly 15 minutes to say this. This woman who turned hostile towards me. So back in March, she's taken my details. She didn't take my number. She just took my email address. I don't even think I told her my YouTube name. I didn't respond to her last email, but basically, she was going to put me in touch with locals in my area. I had trouble. I've had no response from Let Women Speak. I've had junk mail, but no response to my messages. And I did try to message Kelly on Facebook, I think it was. But I've never, well, she's obviously a very busy woman. And so my parting words with this woman who's turned hostile towards me yesterday, back in March, as I said, it's the only time I've ever been to Let Women Speak. Was back in March at Hyde Park. So back in March, I got on the tube. She said, "Are you coming?" Oh yeah, before we left the pub, the women at the Reformers Tree, a woman and her two friends at the Reformers Tree, had turned up at the pub because they were the ones who were helpful. They told me which pub to go to. They turned up as me and this woman who's turned funny towards me were leaving, and this woman in question was like, who are you? Bryony, do you know these people? You know, are you with these people? Because I've never seen you before. I said, oh, I only know, oh, well, these people. And I felt really embarrassed because she was saying, she was like, interrogating them. I said, I don't know these people. I just know them from the Reformers Tree. They very kindly told me which pub to go to. And she was getting really paranoid. Well, I've never seen you before. So I said to the people, sorry, I've really got to go. I'll text you later. So I didn't know them, but I felt embarrassed because this lady was interrogating them. So this lady that's turned nasty towards me, we go to leave, and she said, I've just never seen those people before. There's something not right. I said, look, I said, I said, but I don't know them. I said, I did feel a bit awkward when you said that to them. And she said, well, maybe I am being a bit paranoid. Um, and I told her about my sister, what had happened. Now, her YouTube stop was just 2 stops away or something like that. So I only had a few minutes to say to her what I've been through. I should really have gone for a cup of tea somewhere with her, but I think because I was so tired. So again, this is back in March. I said goodbye to her. She'd taken my email address. I held her hand tightly as I said goodbye. I said, because I said I feel so sick coming up to London. I said I don't even like coming up to London anymore. So she knew my anxiety. I said goodbye to her. She emailed me a couple of months ago, and I said that I was a bit upset about that black lady who asked me to get to the point back in March, asked me to wrap it up. And she said, "Oh, we just have to ask people to do that." But I never I never got back to her, and so she didn't know this had happened to me last week. I've bearing in mind I'm very ill. I'm anemic. I've lost a lot of blood. Um, my hemoglobin levels were very low, and you know, been suicidal. I'm homeless. I'm struggling because back in March I said that my partner and my sisters are abusing me. My sister, yeah, well, I hadn't seen my partner for weeks and months, and the only time he came down to the Shoreview Hotel, and I've had abuse in these hotels that I've spent thousands of pounds on. This hotel has been on GB News for illegal immigrants. My local MP, the establishment are on my back. And Darren only came down to the Shoreview Hotel the day of the bail thing when they wanted me to, and he was like, "Oh, they're getting obstreperous on the police desk." He left me all alone over Christmas when families are together. I've been completely and utterly isolated. So yesterday, for me to go all the way up to London, to be told by Kelly J. Keane, "No, I don't want you to speak," and I've never spoken to the woman before until I followed them to the pub, and I actually approached Kelly. It took guts for me to approach her, and she said to me, "No, no, I'm not having you speak." Now, so I decided to approach her at the right moment in the pub. And as I said, I'd never spoken to that woman in my entire life, except maybe 2 words when she put the microphone on me in March. And I'm telling you, I only spoke to her for no more than 5 minutes. And the woman I'm speaking about started having a go at me, just like that. I'm going to put the light on. Like, just like that. She was on my case, as if I was on Kelly's case. She said she hasn't eaten anything. She's had such a difficult time yesterday at Scotland Yard when she spoke out. I said, and I said the woman's name. I said, uh, let me think of a name. Eileen. Eileen. That's not her real name. I said Eileen, and I said it. I said it in that. I said, I said, I've, I've, I've never spoken to Kelly before. I said, why this sudden hostility? Because you're on her case. She hasn't. I said, this is the first time I've ever spoken to her, and she was really she was trying to antagonize me. And I thought, I'm not having that. She's not going to get a reaction from me. I said, I've never spoken to her before. I said, 5 minutes. "Oh oh, we were at the reformers tree and you were da 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 da. And she's trying to antagonize a reaction from me out of thin air. I said, where's this all come from? Bearing in mind she was paranoid, she admitted that she was paranoid that I was with these people that I wasn't with last time. So again, something's going on in her. I don't know what it is, but it was horrible. It was just horrible. So I spoke to Kelly and I spoke to her as gently as I could, in the same way that I spoke to my sister, in a really calm, like this, you know. And she looked at me. She didn't say anything. I can't actually remember what she said, but she didn't. She listened. She didn't say anything, but she listened. So then she went to go and get a drink or something to eat or whatever. But this woman, the woman that I'm speaking about that was hostile, she said, Kelly's made up her mind. You're not going to speak again. So that there's something going on in her and it's not nice. It is horrible. There's something very nasty about that woman. So I thought, right, because I'm praying, I'm doing what he wants me to do. So I took a step back. I went and sat down. I felt sick, bearing in mind it's amazing that I'm coping with what I'm coping with. They don't know me from Adam. It does have a cult like feeling. And the thing is, they're supposed to be women that are there for women who are speaking out and going through the kind of thing that I'm going through. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I then spoke to the woman from Birmingham. Is she from Birmingham? Or is she from the Midlands? I can't remember. But she's from the Black Country or Birmingham. I don't know. Or somewhere. Somewhere in the Midlands. Um, and she's the most friendly out of all of them. And I told her what had happened, and she said, "Look, well, I'm sorry, I can't comment, you know." She said, "Oh, I can't." So I drank my £3 cup of tea, bearing in mind this is Hyde Park. And I've paid all that money to go up there to get this hostility. I went all the way up to London. I paid, what was it? Well over £30 to go up to London just for that hostility. And this is to help them and their cause. I'm helping. Darren said that and another thing, the woman who does the filming of the event, I actually said, because what happened was I waited till I waited a while so before I reapproached the woman who's turned nasty for whatever reason. She, as Darren said, Yeshua said, you will know a tree by its fruit. I reapproached that woman and she was so nasty. She was, it's almost like they wanted me to cry. It's actually bullying. You want people to be strong. I tell you what, I'm stronger than that woman will ever be with what I've been through. Because if you can react that way to someone who's a survivor of what 9 years of this, I've never shown tears. I've shown emotions. I've shouted and gotten angry, but I've never cried in front of these cowards, these psychopaths that have done what they've done to me. You know, I was crying afterwards. Yes. I even fed. I told Darren I was feeding a blue tit from my hand I actually had a blue tit feed off my hand, and I was crying and having suicidal thoughts at Hyde Park. I was feeding this blue tit. It fed from my hand, and I was thinking about killing myself because of Let Women Speak. If you're going to be there for women. You're doing all the right things. You're speaking out against what you're speaking out. But even Darren said to me, I watched the live while it was going on because he's got a cold, and he said, I thought there was something not quite right about the way Kelly was speaking to the others, as it something about her speaking as if she was a teacher speaking to her pupils in a classroom. He said there was something not quite right about that. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't listen to you know, it's the spirit behind what they do. And if they're going to be there for everyone, they need to be there for everyone. So honestly, I was just so shocked though. The woman that does the filming of the event, she said, I said my partner actually suggested that I go up, that this would be good for you to hear this. And the woman that does the filming, like again, did this schneedy sort of, she made a niggly comment to the woman who's been horrible to me. And I heard her, I didn't hear what she said, but she sniggered something about, oh, her partner. Ugh. And I said, excuse me. And I went round to her, and it's like she was in her own bubble. She was like, these people, it's like all these, this is why I keep away from women in general. But these smartphones, I don't have a smartphone, an iPhone. I have one of these phones. Okay, I'm old fashioned. I don't have technology. What you see is what you get. This is amateurish. I'm extremely vulnerable. You have to understand, not everybody's, but I know for a fact that those smartphones do something to your brain. Those iPhones, they're not only just dangerous for toddlers and children, they are dangerous for adults. They they do something to your cognitive ability to take in information. So the fact that this woman who does the filming of the event sniggered something to the other woman who's turned nasty towards me. It's like I tried to get her attention and she would blanked me. But this is the kind of thing that children do in the playground, for crying out loud. For crying out loud. This is why I ended up speaking to two men who were friendly, but all of the women there were cliquey, with the exception of the woman from Birmingham, and maybe there was a North American woman who stopped to listen to me. And she said, why don't you get yourself into a women's refuge? I said, no, you don't understand. The MP caseworker, the establishment are on my back. This is, I said, and I told her what had happened. At least she listened to me. And I said, I just don't understand why that woman, why Eileen, that's not her real name, has turned hostile. And I said, I just don't understand. I just don't understand. Where is this coming from? Because she was like, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk about it. With authority. Kelly's made up her mind. She doesn't want you speak it. She's not going to have you speak again. Why? So at least the North American lady listened to me. I said, look, I haven't come here with all my problems. I would have said it in two 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes max. I said, I've never spoken to Kelly J. Keane before. The way she was going on was as if I'd been going on. The way she was speaking was as if I was a stalker. I've I literally only spoke to Kelly J. Keane for no more than 5 minutes, and I'd never spoken to that woman in my entire life, as I said, apart from maybe 2 words when she put the microphone on me back in March. That's it. So there we go. And I went to the loo. I felt sick, and I walked. Well, first of all, I had a little chat with 2 men. As I said, they listened to me. They talked about, because one of the men who looks visibly traumatized, he's been arrested by Thames Valley. I think it's Thames Valley Police, who've got a bad reputation. Well, that's the closest you'll get to the establishment, Thames Valley Police, I guess. I think they're also part of Buckinghamshire as well. I don't know. But he's been targeted by, so these 2 men that I spoke to, one of them's been targeted by the same stalker, a man who identifies as a woman who has stalked Graham Linehan, the writer of Father Ted, and he even went after a mother for no reason at all, just because she made a passing comment that anyone could make that was fair. So there are some nutters out there, but they've given me a couple of contacts. I won't say who they are because I know that there are nutters who watch me. But yeah, so oh my gosh, I've been speaking for an hour, just over an hour, and I wanted to make this 20 minutes max. I've done it again, haven't I? Like I said, this has an effect though on, because obviously I then said to Darren on the train, I got back really late. I said, Darren, I've been crying about this. This has triggered suicidal thoughts. I said, do you understand now why? When you kept saying to me, have you contacted Kelly J? Have you contacted Kelly J? I said, you kept on at me for months. I said, are you behind this? In the same way that you said to me, I I should leave a card and flowers for Bronya, my transgender sister, and I had a desk sergeant threaten me with prison if I do that. Do you see what I mean now? I said to Darren, I said, I think that you're behind all of this. And he was like, no, these people. I said, yeah, but I constantly think that Darren's behind everything. Because obviously, because I'm extremely vulnerable. It's that caring role. It's that caring role. Because obviously he took control because of that caring role, whether he meant to or not. I'm now programmed to think he's behind everything. And what with this Orwellian think tank, this tyranny of Keir Starmer, because, this is I'm trying to factor in everything, but I've got everything being so, like he said, like Darren always says, pray, pray, pray. I said, that's all I've been doing. So that's all I can do. And obviously, I'm suffering for it. I'm going to end this video with just one thing. Look, Helen in Wales, if you see this, I didn't read your text messages. I'm not well. You know my second. I'm not going to be rude to you because I know that you care about me. But the thing is, you I know that you're a mother and you've got. I don't understand why you're listening to trolls. I haven't been on Facebook. I can barely function. I'm homeless. With all due respect to you, if you see this, I'll say it again. I don't know your address. I've never even been to Wales. You know more about me than I know about you. You know me from watching me on YouTube. I gave you the address of this hotel, and you very kindly sent me a birthday card. And you're the only person that I gave Josh Burundi my case reference with the local MP. I gave you my case reference number. So you've got more information about me, and bearing in mind I had a malicious communications letter, pages long, sent here. The police didn't look at that, but they beat me out of here. I'm extremely vulnerable, and I don't mean this in a funny way to you. You've got a support network, you've got family. I still don't know how my father died. I'm extremely vulnerable. I've got no parents, no relatives, two siblings who are screwed up, who went through my father's things without me, which is illegal. I was reported missing. I was talking about writing a suicide note. I haven't been on Facebook. So this troll, who is, what did you say his name was? Bobby Fisher. It sounds like the police abusing powers lot. And you've been watching my YouTube channel for a few years now. And you're talking about someone that you and they don't know, Juliet Rawson. I didn't have Juliet Rawson's personal details. You and this troll don't know her personal details. And if you want to know, Juliet is dead. Okay? So there we go. So why you're listening to some troll on Facebook who is saying to you that I've put information out there about someone else that I barely knew. I don't know, Juliet. I thought you were a busy mother, though. Why are you listening to these? You know, I had a troll from your city in Wales, and I've never been to Wales, that's a friend of yours. All right, not a friend, but you said they were a Facebook friend from the same city, who told me to go and jump off Beachy Head, and you said block them. So I don't know. I don't understand, Juliet. I mean, sorry, Juliet. I don't understand, Helen, why you. Yeah, but I thought you wanted to help me with the local MP. You text me to say you were too busy. You're a busy mother, but you're listening to these trolls. I don't know where you live. I don't understand it. I haven't even been on Facebook. I went on Facebook the other day. I've lost blood. I can barely sleep. I can barely function. I'm being tortured by the establishment. I went on there to find that my live streams have been blocked. I don't know why. I'm barely functioning. I'm barely getting any fresh air. I'm barely eating, sleeping, and what's it? I thought you were going to contact my local MP for me because Ewan Morrison, my caseworker with the local MP, said he hasn't received your email that you sent months ago. So anyway, I don't understand. I'm sorry, but I don't have I don't have the anyway, there we go. I 7 days ago I was reported missing by someone who doesn't know me that well, who reported me missing because I've been talking about writing a suicide note and leaving it on a bag of gifts for my partner. Okay? And then less than 24 hours later, bang, bang, bang on the door, and police beat me out of here into a voluntary interview. I was tortured. They were switching off the intercom. That's it now. I've nothing more to say. So anyone out there who is genuine, I really don't have the time or energy for anyone. I certainly won't be going back to Let Women Speak, but I will be speaking my truth about, and that's why I've made this video. So Kelly J. Keane wants to contact me, anyone watching this YouTube channel, tell her my Facebook name, because I've messaged her on Facebook. Because I know that even the trolls know my Facebook name, so Kelly J. Keane can message me. Most people, this is how murderers and Mancunian candidates are created by the Freemasons. They are driven to insanity. They did this with John Alexander Patterson from the Royal Commission. I met him in the psychiatric unit. And if the women at Let Women Speak find that a bit odd, then so be it. Because he actually went to Scotland Yard himself with legalese documents that he showed me. Now, if I'd known that you were at Let Women Speak, that you were at Scotland Yard the day before Kelly said to me, I don't want you, as in me, to speak, if I'd known that, I would have been there. Because like I said, John Alexander Patterson went there and they tortured him. And as I said, he was exposing everything. Baby organ harvesting on the NHS, everything. He showed me the legalese documents, fraud, theft, money laundering, baby organ harvesting on the NHS, legalese documents. He went to Scotland Yard. Sussex police tortured John Alexander Patterson, a man in his 70s who was part of the Royal Commission. So, if you think I'm a bit too blubbery, then you're not real women. And I'm more likely to listen to my partner Darren, because those two men were far more helpful than those women were. That's it. I've nothing more to say.